All right, do you have to read your opening statement?
Yeah, it's connecting to the stream. Just a second. Okay, this is the April 5th, 2021 regular meeting of the Town of Groton Conservation Commission. My name is Bruce Lofgren from the Office of Planning and Development Services. The chair of the meeting is Larry Dunn. If any members of the public would like to speak during the public communications portion of this meeting, you can do so by raising your virtual hand. Depending on which device you have, you can do it either on the bottom of the screen or the top of the screen. And if you're on a phone, you can dial *9, and we'll see that you have your hand raised, and we can call on you one time. And with that, I'll pass it over to Larry Dunn to take the roll call.
All right, let's go around. I will call out the names. You guys raise your hand. Larry Dunn, chair. Bray.
Ray Rafferty, vice chair.
All right, Tom.
Tom Olson, member.
Kristen.
Kristen DeStante, member.
Karen.
Karen Scapino, member.
Ann.
Ann Schmidt, member.
And Michelle.
Michelle Fitzpatrick, secretary.
Yeah, very good. So the gang's all here. So I guess we can move right along to the approval of minutes on March 1st, 2020. So are there any comments, Tom?
I move that we accept the minutes as written with one correction: the fact that it says Historic District Commission on the headers of the minutes. That should be just corrected to Conservation Commission.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
In section 4.3 open space ordinance, I was wondering if the word stewardship was the right word in there. It was decided that this item would be tabled for the foreseeable future as the commission reviews other methods of stewardship. It seems like it's more than just stewardship, I didn't know what word to use, but maybe regulations or stewardship and regulation, or maybe that's.
I think I thought the point of the ordinance was, a lot of stewardship information and content. So I don't know, Tom, what do you think? I'm not sure.
I have no problem with this leaving it as stewardship because it's under the what we're going to be doing in the long run, and
Okay.
And this is, it was part of having an ordinance in place was part of our objective relatively in the discussion of the general stewardship topic.
Right, Michelle?
Would management be a better word, Ann, do you think, or is that worse than stewardship?
Well, I guess I was thinking that there were so many do's and don'ts in the ordinance that didn't sound like stewardship to me, but I can see how it would fall under that. Management would maybe encompass both of those. I'm fine with stewardship as,
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not sure it makes a lot of difference since we tabled the
Right.
darn thing anyway, so. All right, other comments? I'm looking for a second.
I second it.
All right, that was Karen, I believe
Yes.
verbally said that. All in favor, raise your hands.
Fine.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 approved, no abstentions, and no negative. All right, so we move on to public communication. So we do have members of the public on. I think there's 2. It was 3, but it's now 2. If they would raise their hands if they want to make a comment. I mean, as attendees, they can hear all this stuff, right, Bruce?
Yeah, they can. I'm not seeing any hands. Maybe they just want to listen in. They don't have anything to say right now. So.
All right, well, I mean, I know Catherine Pratt did provide a memo that's in the package. They go into, it was on Mystic Oral School redevelopment. So we have we have talked about that. And it's really early in there. We've expressed, concerns about maintaining the open space portion of it, since a lot of it's quote already developed. And the cost of trying to return that to quote native environment is we're talking millions. So I'm not, that to me, that's practically ain't gonna happen. So our focus has been on protecting the forest canopy and the areas that are there, and keeping those from being reduced. So I think I keep waiting for some additional information. So Bruce, do you have any more information on how that's progressing? I mean, I know this is a multi-year planning project.
No, I don't have any real updates. I mean, no applications have been submitted for anything yet from the Mystic Oral School. I mean, for zoning text amendments or otherwise, there's been no applications formally submitted to the.
All right.
Office of
Could
Planning and Development.
could you do a favor and find out what's the next checkpoint? I mean, just because we've already talked about the information there. The town council has already made a determination to at least proceed, to the next step. The question is, when's the next step, right? To be able to have additional input once we get additional input.
Yeah, well, I mean, every planning and zoning commission meeting we have a public communications portion of it, and every meeting people come and express their opinions on the project. And I mean, the next step is going to be a zoning text amendment, I would believe, but the timeline is it's not set in stone. So I could try to get you a next step on it, but
Let me ask it simpler. Is anything going to happen before our next meeting?
no, I doubt it. No.
Okay, so we'll ask you every month that says, is there
Okay.
something coming up in the next month?
You can do
Yes,
that.
I'm sorry. I saw there's some hands up. Kristen, you were first, I think.
Yeah, the concern is that they've raised the number of units up to over 900 units. And have we weighed in on that seems to be just completely out of scale with what's appropriate for that, whatever even surrounding green area you might have around it. You have that many people trampling around in there, that's just out of control, disproportionate, unacceptable. So have we weighed in on that with the town officially?
No, we haven't. And I'm not sure, what is the final determination and number of units? I don't know. I don't have any data or statistics that says how many, if there's X amount of people there, how many are actually going to go, quote, as you said, tromping in the woods. It could be 3, it could be all 900. But I don't know the answer to that. I mean, there's a lot of other things in this whole mix. And things that I don't think we should weigh in on, like traffic in the area. That I think is outside our purview. I think, protecting the open space that's there, and what you said is related to that. Well, I don't, what I'm asking is, we don't have enough information on what the plan is. I mean, it still may die on its own. Don't know.
Because 900 units, not 900 people. 900 units is like 1,800 to 2,000 people probably.
Yeah.
A lot of people in
They
a
may all
residential neighborhood.
be homebound. Who knows? So I don't know.
Mhm.
All right, so we'll just keep saying until we get more data on the project. It's kind of hard to take a position other than the one we've already taken, which says we want to watch this very closely and protect the forest and the open space that's there. Okay, next item on the agenda. Well, it was labeled open space. So in terms of the open space plan, there's nothing specific per se on the base plan. I mean, that's now out there on the website, which is the second agenda item. I will say that the town website is back up again from the last meeting we had. And everything should now be readable. Like, there's need to be a little cleanup. I thought I'd wait for after this meeting because one of the discussions I want to have is the publication and the putting of the stewardship workbooks out on the website. So, I think we can make the website a little more user friendly, but that's a different question. So I don't know if anybody has any comments on the websites that are there. I guess not. So I think we'll move into we'll circle back after the stewardship workbook. So I think I'll turn it over to Tom in terms of the stewardship workbooks. He and the team's been doing yeoman work. And I know it takes me a while to read all that stuff and keep up on it. But so Tom,
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm going to be sharing the screen with and I've got all of the 9 workbooks. I've actually developed 10 workbooks. I had anticipated that 9 of them are focused in on the areas that we looked at. I apologize, only 7 of them made it into the package in advance. There was 2 that got dropped because of size and stuff, but I have all 9 of them here. And then our 10th one, I'll discuss separately. So the first one I developed was to take a look at the stewardship plan for for Birch Plain Creek. So what I do here is I'll kind of, bring these down a little bit. And I use the same format for all of the stewardship plan. So there's a basic introduction, a property description, an ownership and land history. Let me blow this up a little bit. And then in some cases, I'd have a little discussion on the abutting parcels and any kind of unique stuff. Like in the case of this is that you have a designated, the Kalinowski Conservation Area is a separate area, is a subset of the full property of the Kalinowski School. Okay, that is listed in a section of the open space inventory as a open space with facilities on it because it has the school. Okay. And then each one area, we would go into each of the pin, a little bit of description of it, a little bit of the history of it, how it got here, and then what the current land uses are. In this case, is a good example where when I went around and looked I actually walked all these properties. And in the case of the Joel property, there's homeless people living on it. We've reported this in prior meeting a year and a half ago. Or half a year ago, and we did confirm that there people are still, and I did confirm this week that, or since in this past month, that there's people still out there. But the town manager is aware of that, and he's working with social services and the police to ensure there's no issues. Then in each one of them, also I'm working with Larry, put the natural system value together. And basically, and we kind of just put the things, this parcel's evaluated in 2021 the comparative value of $4,221 per acre, which is the upper quadrant of all of Groton open space parcels. So I just kind of did a categorization of where this would sit. Okay.
Tom,
I have a base map.
Tom,
Yes.
can I just ask a question? Go back to the open space. Is that the value, its value as open space, or is that what that valuation is?
Off of the economic model. Now let Larry answer any more detailed question to that.
So
Larry?
as open space, it's worth $4,000 an acre, but as developed space, it might be worth a different number, right?
well, that's not, since these are all have been identified
Designated,
by
right?
us to be open space.
Mhm.
The question on the table was, there wasn't a defined stewardship plan for them.
Mhm.
All right, so as part of the analysis of what it is, then I didn't bother, because there aren't any development plans or options. And I just put it down and did the natural, if you look at the tabs, it's just the natural services value of it. And it allows us to do comparison because I've run those for each of the properties.
So it's
that
just
we've
relative
done.
to other open space, the values with respect to other open space or potential open space. So it's just assigning that.
Well, the value is the value. It's an absolute number. But the information would be, oh, gee, it's in the upper quarter
Okay,
of the open space parcels that we've looked at. So just kind of
okay,
provide some positioning. It says, oh, this is actually, which should be there because that's why we said we want to keep it as open space,
mhm.
right? You would expect that. Michelle?
Yeah, this is Michelle. I was wondering what the purpose of that information in the plan is and what it's supposed to mean to people reading the plan.
Exactly.
As far as from my perspective as the author here, it helps to take a look at what do I want to do with this property, okay, as far as for the future, okay? This one's a highly, being in the upper area, more valuable things, this is one of the things I should be taking a look at in the big picture, okay? So this is a data point in here. You can take a look at it. Is it near other open spaces I want to coordinate with? Is it going to be part of the green belt? There's a lot of factors that you put together from your stewardship plan. And this is an added one that we've put in here to basically help us prioritize that from a value perspective.
Okay, and honestly, even though I've been part of this thing the whole along, to me, just seeing that number doesn't, if there is there another phrase we could add there saying the so what about that? Like, so, which is upper quarter, therefore, what's the point of that? Can we add a phrase to that maybe?
Yes, I can. It's a good, that's why I've been putting this out here to get comments from everybody, and I can get further explanation.
Or could we assign a sliding scale, like a 1 to 10 sliding scale? Because putting a dollar number on there, kind of like someone says, oh, wow, that's not worth very much as open space. I could buy, my property costs a lot more than that. So I know it's not available as commercial property, but I'm just wondering if you take that, you got inflation and in 5 years, what is that really worth? If there was a sliding scale of 1 to 10, to say, okay, on our scale, our value of 10 as being the absolute highest possible value for open space, this would rate, let's say, an 8 or something. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, to take the number out of there, the dollar value out of there altogether.
Yeah,
And
because
keep the
dollars are
quartile.
gonna, what?
And keep which quartile it's in.
Yeah,
upper
keep the
quarter.
quartile, what the significance of that is, but to not have, because that, I just think, I agree, it's like that, having a dollar value just, I think raises more questions than it
It's
helps
a
with.
trigger. It's a trigger like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
I want to buy me some of that. It's so cheap, why are we keeping it open? It has no value, or we should develop it because it's inexpensive. I'm saying? It just.
Well, you're going to see that just for in these we've done it. I've got $1,200 ones and I got $9,000 ones, and this is coming out at 42. So just to let you know.
Yeah,
That's why I
just
put
think,
this stuff in here is on the recommendation of Larry, because we are from the open space plan, we
Right.
are taking a look at economic values. One of our major considerations for comparative value of open space.
Okay, and that was my comment. Isn't the purpose of that so that if the planning and development, the conservation and planning and development people need somewhere to begin if they start looking at any of these properties, or?
Well, I think in the context of stewardship, it would be, if I'm in the upper quarter of open space parcels, then I would probably have more restrictions than if I was in the lower quarter of open space parcels, because that's if you look underneath the natural value calculation, it's typically because there's wetlands, there's other things that provide filtration. You don't really want a lot of traffic in those areas. So, I mean, that was part of it. And it was just a shorthand way of doing that. And there's a whole book they can read on comparative value. So I'm
But I'm wondering, rather than read the book, if we had, like, again, some kind of sliding scale 0 to 100, a scale of 0 to 10, and then refer them back to the evaluation model and maybe have that somewhere in a footnote, that how the value is achieved.
We have no sense of a scale
Right.
anywhere.
Right.
What if you
So,
well, how do you know it's the upper quartile if there's no scale?
This is just a comparison of other open spaces, the ones that we've evaluated. Larry's done a number of them, and so I'm just saying it's comparative what we've done, evaluated so far.
Right. I get that.
Is there a way to just put a boilerplate, a little statement about the purpose of that and let it go as that? That would be on all of them, so you don't have to, just some little boilerplate stating the purpose of the natural system value. I know there's that whole book, but
I'm
All
flexible.
right,
I don't
yeah,
know. I'm
listen,
just
guys,
bringing it up.
yeah, I want to, yeah, we're kind of, I'd like to focus on restrictions and plans rather than this. So I'll work with Tom on providing additional descriptions that says, who cares, all right, of that.
Yeah,
But, yeah, I'd like to spend our time on, a decision or an action or to do this rather than something that, like I said, we worked on for 2 years now in terms of, natural values of the
Mhm.
acres.
Mhm.
All
It's just a
right, so
matter
let
of
me
disclosure, so.
Mm,
add
okay.
Okay,
explanation.
gotcha. We'll continue moving on along here for the first one here. This is the base map. As I mentioned before at last month's meeting, I said I would be kind of grouping things together, and that's what I've done here is I put 5 different or 4 different parcels together. And this could easily be extended if we want to the into the area just south of here is where the in this area right in here is where the new Thames River School is. That area and also with the conservation area. So these are expandable. And also, do we want to talk about the rest of the? I only discussed the Kolonowski one here. It's conservation area, but there's a significant lot of other open space. Do we want to go into? I'm just kind of tossing ideas out here. The rest of the school property, and also, do we want to go into the abutting property over here? This is open space owned by the city. Do we want to include that into our space? Because I know that they don't have any kind of stewardship plan as far as from an expansion perspective. So just things to think about as far as on how much do we want to include in these in the future, or modifications to this initial draft. Then I go into the
Tom, point of clarification.
sure.
So we start off with 22 parcels, I believe, that didn't have stewardship plans from our list. Are you saying that the 4 in this one is for the 22?
I included, spaces like in here. This I had the 2 Joels plus the Kolonowski conservation area, and so I added this small one here, which is onto the right here. It's an 8-acre one, okay? Because I originally said I'm just going to look at 10 acres or greater, but in this case, it's embedded in it, so it didn't cost me anything to add it to this package.
All right, so it's not effectively, it's not part of the 22. I'm just trying to kind of keep
Right,
track of.
but but as far as we said we'd go through and get everything with 10 acres and above, okay?
Okay,
So if it's an abutting property and it's within, the same scope and it's got the same characteristics, I just added it to the plan as far as a captured parcel.
which I think was a good idea.
all right.
Okay. And then I started going into identification of resources. As I walked the properties, I found basic trash dumping and that type of stuff. It gave some standby pictures, the type of stuff that really should be probably considered and looked at. Also the areas for runoff into the Birch Plain Creek. I talked about the goals. Being maintained. This is the primary thing, is that most of the goals is being maintained as a natural state to support the town's overall carbon sequestration bank and watershed protection, in this case of Birch Plain Creek. What's unique about this one is that there's already an ongoing program with the Eastern ECCD, Eastern Connecticut Conservation District, to improve the protection of Birch Plain Creek. So it already has a bunch of action items in this case. So we're in pretty good shape as far as for things to go do off of there. One area that in regard to stakeholder analysis is establishing potential for hiking paths in the area. Kalinowski Conservation Area, there's been a grassroots effort led by Conrad Hetty from the town council. He's installed some really nice trails up there. I've just got done walking in this last couple of days. A super job there. And I think they want to continue that across the street here from the Kalinowski area into the Joel property and then onto the Thames River School. And so more to follow as far as in taking a look at those in the future. Then I gave a bunch of history here in regard to the Baker Cove watershed, and then also to the use of landscape type of attributes as far as things that we should be looking at. And it gets goes back, as was standard here for most of these, is that we're dealing with the high characteristic woodland and then the watershed areas with wetlands. Moving along here, then for each of the areas, I have a hydrology and topographic map so you can see what type of flood FEMA zones are in it and what the topography of each of the parcels are. A little description as far as for what we're seeing, a soils map, and then the land coverage for the land coverage for the trees and stuff. And then I'd have the if there's any natural diversity database areas and the resiliency factors, which this one is all, it looks really nice with it. There's plenty of stuff that there. Then I had historical photographs for the 1934 aerial survey and the 1990 survey and what it looks like. So you can kind of get a feel. And then in the base map was the 2015 survey. So then I also, if there's any known historical sites, ruins, cemeteries, and the like, I know in this case there's some stone walls. And then our management plan recommendations are kind of standard, except this one's a little bit more that I was able to add in the Bakersfield Watershed Committee, but just general appearance, boundary markings, public use encouragement, signage, taking with the formal walks within the parcel, evasive control, wildlife habitat establishment, and incorporation into the green belts. And in most cases, all these were along a green belt, and I'd highlight the green belts and where this all fits in here. So,
Tom, a question.
Yes.
So, going back to the recommendations, which quite frankly, I'd like to focus on those because the rest should be homework, I guess, prior to the meeting. So is this where if there's a restriction recommendation, versus, for example, no bikes, and I'm talking, can't have motorbikes anywhere, but I'm just meant bike trails. We want to restrict bike trails, or we want to restrict it for something else. Is this where that would show up?
That would show up, but I can tell you, I did not add any restrictions in these initial drafts. I did not generate it on my own.
Okay. All right. Well,
at this point in time, I had nothing that was overwhelmingly obvious to me that we would want to be restricting.
Okay.
And a lot of that is principally due because there is very limited public interfacing with these properties, to be honest with you. And particularly this one is a good example where the Joe property has been it's in state here for over almost 40 years, and you can tell that nothing's happened on the property. There's no.
Right. Well, but you are recommending a walking trail.
So that's one of the factors here that I'm kind of balancing things out here as I go look at these individual parcels, trying to add restrictions for something that it's not broke. What am I trying to fix?
Okay.
Well, I would just say that it might be easier to preempt, like, let's say if you don't think bikes should be riding through wetlands, it's probably easier to preempt it than once people start doing it, then take it away from them. For example, bike trails, Comment.
Bray?
Can I make a comment? First off, I want to say a big thank you to Tom for putting all these parcels together. his last statement just now, that all of the, a lot of the properties that he's walked and looked at, I am jealous. Because I haven't been out to a lot of them in a very long time. And we're finally, through the conservation plan we've just developed, and then with Michelle's capabilities of GIS, to really map out where a lot of these smaller ones or ones that were just not on everybody's radar. And one of the problems that I see is that deciding, is this one bike trails or not bike trails? Should it have a trail on it? Is, as Tom said, how much use is it getting right now? I've looked at and walked a number of trails in the Mystic area that are getting heavy use, that are open space parts of the town. But these other parcels, I come across, and then I ask people who've lived in that area for a very long time, walk it, you ever go through some of these things? And in general, they might say, as a kid, you know, we went a little bit there, but yet there's no formal trail. And at some point, we're going to have to decide in the future, do we want to put trails on it or not? Because one of the biggest problems is going to be trail maintenance. When you look at each one of the little properties that Tom has brought forth to us, that have local trails that can be used, but if we want to formalize it a lot more, where is this energy going to come from? So that's something that we're going to have to discuss at some point in the future. The other is that a couple of the maps, Tom, if you could back up.
Sure.
I have a difficult time with the resilience map. That one, and if you go one more, not necessarily the resiliency map, but
This is the diversity map.
not the diversity map. And one of the things, again, my old argument about the diversity map is we have a lot of properties that Tom has written up about that do not have anything from the diversity map, from the state's mapping. And one of the reasons is no one's walked down there with 40 years of looking in there, looking for what's out there. So whereas a lot of other properties in the town where these things are located, somebody has been out there who knows what to look for, and that's raised everybody's awareness of it. So those properties that don't have it doesn't mean that they don't have it. It's just one of those things that we have to dig deeper to get there. Could you back down one more?
Which one? Go down one?
No, up, down. I'm sorry, the opposite direction.
Opposite direction, okay.
Back up.
This was the land coverage.
Yeah, I have a difficult time with this one. Because as I quickly look through the maps that are before this and try to orient where you are, where the property lines are.
Yeah, this one's a little tougher because the way that they put everything in there between the water and the grasslands and the roads and everything, this is a tougher one to read. And you can't control the information relative to the transparency of the layers.
Right.
So you kind of have to just line up where the streets are and that type of stuff. The Connecticut Road, the EV parking lot, the school, the lake, right in here, and then deal with the stuff. I put these in here more for they're not to be a true source of information per se, but just to say that we've looked at it as the Conservation Commission that this is a factor in evaluation of what things that we should be looking at this and things that we should be potentially protecting. That's why these are in here, not necessarily, I mean, if you want to go into details on this, you know, we've explained all this in the open space plan, and all the links are in there in the open space plan on how to get to these things. You know, these different layers are done by either Yukon Clear or DEP in the case of the Natural Diversity Database, the Nature Conservancy for the resilience. So there's other people that are doing this, not Town of Groton, Conservation Commission, or anyone here. These are outside agencies that come in, have, you know, great big studies going on, and we're just information users.
I'm not arguing the science. I'm just pointing out that as we flip through these, this one is a hard one to read, to capture the reinforcement of protecting this open space, for instance, as compared to the earlier maps, which are just the town property maps.
Yeah, but it's just the source information that I can go to.
Right. It's nice to have, but it's one of those ones that if you start to look at them and you study them, it means something to you. Where if you're interested in hiking on one of these particular trails, this map isn't going to be very helpful.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing about if, you know, as far as, but you got to remember that as far as these stewardship plans, these are for the properties that are nobody's using, because they're basically been just set up as vacant land at this point. And that's why, you know, we're taking on as the Conservation Commission here, developing these to take a look at these individual properties and to see if is there something from the town use that we should be proposing and stuff. Is from, you know, as I've been putting these together, and you'll find a couple of these other ones, there are some things as I do this research where we said, oh, somebody should be doing something here. In the case of, like, for the Kylie property, there's actually restrictions that we're not following through with.
All right. Michelle has her hand up.
Hi, yeah. First of all, I want to commend Tom. These are amazing. Okay, yeah, we're making comments on them, but I am super impressed with the amount of work that went into this, and I think they're great. So my point at this point is one of the under the management recommendations, that whole list. One of the list is public use encouragement, and I'm questioning whether we should be encouraging public use of this land. I mean, I think we should clean it up. I think we should take care of it, but I don't know that we should be encouraging people to use it.
Okay, Michelle, that's exactly what I want our discussions to be on, because this provides the information. Tom took a whack at the recommendations, and our focus should be on the recommendations. Guys, we don't want anybody to go on the land. We want to keep it, you know, clean and pristine, and to Bray's point, another 40 years and nobody's walked it. That's okay.
Right.
But
So
we've done it
I
as a conscious decision.
I think we should eliminate public use encouragement as a recommendation. Just take it off the list.
Well, the problem you have on this particular lot is that you already have, and this is where this interfacing between these different properties goes. The Kalinowski School went off and developed a nature trail on their school property. The town counselors from the city are saying, hey, I'm paying town taxes here. I want to be able to use stuff that's in the town or in the city. So they went off with conservation advocates and Avalonia and GOSA, and have developed a new extension of the trail onto the Kalinowski Conservation Area. And so the public use in this case is already there. They've already said, I want to be able to walk from this area that's in the city on the Kalinowski all the way down to the Birch Plain Creek Conservation Area in the city. Okay, so the public use has already been, you know, that bag is open. Okay, so to say this particular one, you know, in other areas I have actually not included it, this public use recommendation, but in this case, I think if that was our intention, it's too late.
Oh, this is Michelle again. I'm not saying we say public can't use it. I'm just saying we don't encourage it. So we can acknowledge it's being used, take care of it, but not encourage more use. So I would just get rid of the whole encouragement issue. And if you need to say something about, moderating or take, like, I don't know what you want to say about, it's already being used, but we don't need to encourage more, I guess is my point.
I have a question. Should we be considering a criteria for public use or public use encouragement? And that way it's a standard that could be applied to the different properties. If you have a criteria instead of, like if something is 3/4 wetlands, then probably you don't want anybody going there. But you need a criteria to make that judgment, because then when somebody questions it, you have that list of reasons why it was designated, however that determination came up.
I think that's a good point. One of the things that I did here was let's go down was that as part of the 10-year management timeline, a lot of this kind of goes back is to take a look, in this case, we have the Baker Cove thing, get public entrances for area cleanups, volunteer coordination, parking, and survey residents for their interest in improving open space uses, signage needs, additional hiking and possible biking trails. Turning this kind of over to the volunteer coordination and see what is interest from the public perspective. If the public in this, I think Birch Plain is an excellent example of areas that we may want to parcel this into sections here for the Kalinowski, for the city part and for the town part. So maybe as we go through and further develop this particular plan, I think we're bringing up some good points here. But I think we owe it to, from a management perspective, is to say, hey, we need to encourage public interest in here to get some volunteers to say, hey, I want to be like the steward of the Kalinowski conservation area or the Joel property, area, and take a look at this and see, do I want to be putting stuff in here? Is there enough of a groundswell for interest? To some degree, we should be encouraging public use of these properties, particularly when they abut areas where there's been demands being put on us from the town council. And we heard this, when Larry and I did the briefing a couple of weeks ago, what can be done more for the city, for people there to be able to have things that are close by for them. And so this is where I'm trying to balance this public use and encouragement with preservation of the areas. And so,
Tom, you've done a phenomenal job in putting all of this together. You really have.
Well, guys, look, we're 7 folks here, and the thought is that if there's a majority of people on a specific parcel that says we should not encourage public use or extensive use, then that becomes our recommendation. But in order to make progress, if one person says I don't want to do it and the other 6 have no opinions, I'd say leave it as it is. That there's not because there's not an overwhelming sentiment to do something with the property. On this one, we do know, as Tom mentioned, that the town has already driven by the public, has actually in the last month made trails, doing postings, and in fact encouraging the trail. I think for us to come back and say, in the face of public opinion and usage, to say, well, we think that ought to be restricted, I don't think it's gonna work, right? And it doesn't help us in the long run. Yep.
Yeah, this is Michelle. No, I didn't say to restrict it. My point is there's a difference between restricting and not encouraging. I have in no sense at all suggested that we should restrict anything. It belongs to the town, and the people have a right to access it if that's appropriate. I'm just saying we shouldn't be necessarily encouraging public participation. We can still work with the town. In fact, I think it's a great idea, find volunteers if they want to do whatever. I'm not saying don't do any of those things. I'm just saying, don't say that we're encouraging use. That's all.
All right, is there any other member of the commission that supports that point of view? Ray?
Uh, I agree with Michelle that looking at the great work that Tom has been doing, and not only has he been going into the computer to look at flyovers and so forth to add information, but he's also been on the ground to actually walk it, that it's and if there's a very limited use of it at this point, 40 years later, it's not probably necessarily an important one for it to put a lot of effort on our part. I think that what this is doing is that we are gathering information about all of these places that we just didn't have before. Some of the properties that Tom's found, I'd forgotten about, I wasn't aware of. And there are others now I'm really intrigued about going out and walking and looking at some of the connections that he had talked about. But just to go back to, we should be comfortable with just saying at this point, we're not going to recommend doing anything with the property. We're going to just leave it as it is at the moment. And my sort of goal with the Conservation Commission was one of just getting these open spaces and now connecting these open spaces with others as Tom's trying to link them and seeing where we have possible future linkages taking place that we can coordinate with. At the same time, that this is in the background of what we already have. And if it's not being used very much at this point, there aren't very many trails and they're not well used. For whatever reason, that local area that lives around there at this point, they're not really that much interested in walking the trails. Because there are obviously other places in town that are much more active, like Haley Farm. It gets a lot of people there.
If you look at this management timeline, the very last thing, though, says survey area residents for their interest in improving the open space usage, signage needs, and additional hiking and possible hiking trails. And then recommendation that Tom made was to involve Parks and Rec. And that seems to be the reasonable thing to do before a final decision is made on any of the parcels.
Well, one of the things that Tom brought out repeatedly from one parcel to another, there aren't boundary markers. And working with Avalonia, when they acquire property, and I think GOSA does the same, one of the first things they do is get out there and get a surveyor and officially mark all the boundaries and the corners. And then they review that each year or over a period of time. We've done nothing of that with the town-owned open space. And one of the things I was thinking that hasn't been mentioned here, and I don't know in Tom's travels, but there's a piece of property that Avalonia has that's up by Fieldcrest, where there's been problems of ATVs making their own trails on the land trust property, coming from the adjoining property. And because the property is difficult to access, it's very rocky and hilly and has wetlands and so forth, that it's not an easy one to have formal trails on. But since the land trust has acquired it, and they're very careful about marking all the corners and particularly marking areas where the ATVs have been coming onto the property, all that is really slowed down. and changed it. That doesn't mean that other people now are out there hiking and making new trails, but it's having marked the boundaries has certainly quieted down some of the violations, if you will, going on with those properties. So there's a lot of work that's bubbling up, that's coming on these things. And Tom, in some of his reports, has talked about other people have already considered some of the town-owned property as their own extension of their lawns or their dog paddock, where they fenced in for their dog and so forth, just because no one's been out there to remind them in marking the boundaries. So these are lots of things that we can discuss in the future.
All right, well, back to the point on this particular parcel. I guess, Tom, the only question I heard was, do we want to encourage use or not, right? So that was raised by, I would say, 1.5. So in order to make progress here, either we want to encourage use or not as a recommendation. So I will request a vote, if you will, or a motion to reduce encouragement by the commission for this particular parcel, and then we'll move on. Is there such a motion?
I move that we remove the public use encouragement as one of the recommendations.
Is there a second?
Okay,
Given
then.
the second, the motion, the motion fails.
I don't know that we need to do that, to say that at this point in time.
Well, it's in the document. What were these documents are now public, right? So these, as we go through here, it needs to say, at least at this point in time, this is our official management recommendations for this parcel. I mean, that's really what we're trying to do, to make progress here and move things along. It doesn't say at some future point we can go, ah, darn, we screwed up. It shouldn't be. But right now, I want to be able to move through that. We got another 9 to go, and I don't want to, spend 2 hours on each one of these, and we're not going to make any progress. So, so right now is, I think we've established that there is community interest. Parks and Rec has actually done some boundary marking, not on all the properties have. And there's trails that have been made in the last month or two. So that does change the dynamic from where we were, from where we are. So given that, Tom, I would continue down since we've had that discussion.
Okay, to the next
And
one.
was that the end of this
That was,
particular parcel?
yeah, we finished up, once I get past the 10-year management, it's just contracts, and then the final evaluation of this open space is full mature let. And that, and to continue the working with the Baker Cove people. So that's it. That's the end of the plan, and that starts the next plan up. So I spent more time on this first one because it was a good sample, and it was also the first one up. But this was probably is the other extreme. It's probably a good one to look at from the other extreme here. The Zdrozak Drive is a single parcel. It's only 5 acres. It's and it's 100% woodland. Wetlands. And we got it from the Boyers because it was they just gave it to the town. It's adjacent to some commercial multi-story stuff. I got the photo in here for current land usages. Again, no postings, no restrictions. However, dumping contamination is a concern. This is located on Zdrozak Drive. Just kind of you got Zdrozak Drive going alongside, and then down at the southern side of this is the post office, the Groton post office, just to kind of orient you. And there's a creek that just goes through the whole middle of the parcel. Okay, it's an unnamed creek that flows into Birch Plain after it goes under all the parking lot and Route 1 and then goes across the parking lot at Big Y and then goes into Birch Creek.
Could you point out the post office?
The post office is still is 190 down here in this lower corner.
Okay, can you back up just a little bit more? No, and what's the 193 or whatever that
That's
building?
the Michelle La Triumph Apartments on Michelle Lane.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, got it. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, that's the stuff on the east side of the parcel. Then you got Drosack Drive on the west side. And the entrance is from Drosack Drive. Okay.
Yep.
And then we'll continue down here. My biggest concern when I walk the property, it's extremely invasive, wetlands. It's hard to walk on it. But when I did take some pictures here, is that the abutting property from next door is basically turned he owns I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but the guy runs a number of small rental houses. And it looks like he's dumping everything from his rentals over the bank here from his house. This whole bank is just dumped with, this trash. There's sofas, mattresses, everything else, this bulky waste. And the stone wall that you see here in various positions here, that's the boundary. So he's kept his stuff on his side. My concern is that some of it is like right up on the stone wall. It hasn't encroached over here, but it's something waiting to happen. Okay.
So boundary markers right there would be important to keep him from encroaching. Yeah.
So that's why I said do the number of bases, assess the wetlands. This is not conducive to public utilization or recreation. Additionally, neighbors have appeared to have limited interest other than the trash and the dumping noted above. Again, this one has limited habitat resiliency attributes, but we're maintaining the land. It's a very flat piece of land, so there's not a lot of hydro on it, and it's not in any kind of flood areas either. So it's kind of unique from that aspect. You can see a little bit, it's extremely invasive. You can kind of just see where the creek is. It's just try to get to, that's the best I could do. Normally it's a lot more, that's by the post office. It's one type of soil, this glacial flow. And then from the next thing relative to where we are on the map, it's just all this stuff in the dark green. A little bit of orange there for the wetlands. And the natural diversity database, there was nothing there. Yeah, remember this is essentially completely surrounded by commercial and residential and apartments. So it's, there's not much animal traffic and that type of stuff. And because of this, I got the historical photographs, really nothing to talk about here. And likewise for the summary, there's no historical things or points of interest other than the one stone wall that I had that has part of the boundary in of it. And so from a recommendations perspective, this one I can cut them significantly down from the max that you saw on the Birch Plain to the minimum type here. So it's general clearance, boundary markings, signage to discourage dumping and contamination, invasive control along any established trail if we come to something in the future, and any wild or habitat enhancements resulting from any type of trail establishment. So I wanted to, these are again draft things for consideration, but I don't even see any kind of trail coming in here in the future. And that's from a survey perspective. It's just get some coordinate with the Baker Cove folks for improvement actions, verify the boundary, and then survey for discouraged dumping signs. This is the only recommendations from the management timeline. And then you get with the ECCD people for the Baker Cove stuff for special contacts. And then
so guys,
as for primary for wetlands.
All right, thanks, Tom. I think for the progress, for a point of making progress, is these two sections you just went over, I would propose that we make a motion to accept Tom's recommendations, have discussions on it, have a vote, and then we could, kind of move on. And then any discussions would then go back to perhaps other sections and areas. So that would be my proposition. So I'll make a motion to accept section 4A as the recommendation, council's recommendation for this parcel. And I look for seconds. We'll go open for discussion.
I'll second it.
All right, so let's have discussions on the specifics and recommendations, because that's really the point of what we're doing. In addition to all the great work Tom's done in terms of reference information, this really is the core and the key of what we want to do with it.
Could I comment? Is there anywhere in here where we have something saying that, if needs change, that these recommendations may be reevaluated like over a 10-year period? Is there any place in there where it just says it gives us a little flexibility?
Well, the following improvements are to be considered.
Okay.
It's just consideration. It's not locked in on anything.
Yeah, okay, good. Just so that some property suddenly turns up to have some really great species in it, and we have to, that we have the option in the future to amend these as
No,
necessary.
absolutely.
Oh,
Yep.
absolutely.
These are internal working documents essentially for the commission. I mean, there's,
Right, okay.
there's no legislative or
Right.
restrictions or anything we can put in here, because we're as a conservation commission, we're only an advisory board. And so this is going to be our manual per se for individual properties that we're kind of watching out for the town.
So, hi, this is Ann. Tom, you just said they're internal documents for the commission,
Well,
but I thought
Well, we're
Larry
going
said
as a commission. I mean,
they'll
these
be
are
posted.
not, I don't see us taking these to the town council like we did the plan.
Oh, right, okay.
That's what I mean by that. So
But
there's
Larry,
no place
these
for us
will
to
be,
take these to.
these will be posted on our
Right.
website?
Well, I think that one of the things to talk about, we get through this, then it would be, what is our use of this information? Who do we send it to? Clearly, I mean, I think we should send it to Parks and Rec, because we're recommending, they take the lead on a number of these things.
Right,
I would also recommend that it's posted out on our website as work products of the commission. But I agree with Tom per se that other than providing a status to the town council that says, oh, gee, last time we said we had 22 parcels that didn't have management plans. We looked at the stuff. We worked with Parks and Rec. We now got 10 with management plans and agreements. I mean, that's kind of a statusing stuff, but we can do that once a year, which is our requirement, to go back once a year to the town council and tell them what we're doing.
right.
Right. So that would be my suggestion on it, right, and where to go. But so further discussion of, because we'll talk about that when we get through here, because kind of want to get through this before we have that discussion, because you may have a different point of view once we go through the parcels. But any more discussions on this particular parcel?
Just a quick history footnote that when they put in Drostic Drive, they obviously have put a lot of large buildings for accommodating people to live in those places. And they were looking to develop as much as they could along that roadway. They ran into this big wetland area. And somehow at one time it was Spicer was involved with the properties in that area. But this is what they couldn't do anything with it. So it was turned over to the town rather than be a part of an association or something like that. And because it does feed into eventually Long Island Sound, that's a good place to land it. But I agree with Tom that at this point, that's a great one for just let it go on its own.
This is one of the confusion areas that I had as far as from the town perspective, as far as how we got this. This was just given to the town. The town accepted it rather than leaving it with the owner and still taxing it. because
Yes.
this is all part of a big parcel. I didn't see anywhere where they said, I'm giving you this as for my 10% open space. And I don't know if I haven't done sufficient research on it, but some of these I just kind of scratched my head as far as on how the town ended up with some of these things and why they took them at no cost. But
Yeah, I hear you. Well, we can't undo what was done.
yeah,
I guess my only comment on here is that, you have along any established trail. I didn't think there were any established trails.
that's if we have any, I can take that one out. I have no problem with taking that one out. We can do
Yeah, I
that.
mean, this is one that I don't think there should be trails on at all. Just
Okay.
Right.
boundary market, whatever it is, and keep it native to our earlier discussion. So that would be my suggestion on the
I would concur with
recommendation
you.
too.
Looking at it now, I will delete the, without objection, I'll delete those last two bullets.
I don't hear, since I did it in the second, I didn't hear objections to that.
I've got a quick question for Tom. This is the wildlife habitat enhancements resulting from trail establishment. I don't quite understand what that is. You've mentioned that in other of your reports.
Yeah.
What the intent was when I kind of roll some of these over from the formatting was that if you go to these properties, you're going to find a lot of trails that are the natural trails from the deer trails and that type of stuff. And so if we establish some trails, those would be the natural places. So with that, we would be essentially enhancing the trailing that's being used by the wildlife. Okay. And so would we be seeing more increased utilization by both humans and wildlife? That was the intent of it. By opening some additional areas up if we establish trails. But in this
Yeah.
particular
So
parcel,
I think the recommendation on this one was to say invasive plant controls, period.
Yeah.
And take away the established trails thing. It's same as the last bullet, is, take away reference to trail establishment. All right. So any other comments?
Well, once you establish a trail, that impacts the environment anyway. So there are, it's sort of a wash about habitat enhancement for deer versus tromping down on the plants and to make the trail, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a little bit of a wash. And if it were to go away, I don't think the wonderful work that you've done is going to be affected by it.
All right. So the motion has been amended to eliminate the established trail references in this section. All in favor, raise your hands. Okay, so we're unanimous on this one with those adjustments. So check on the Drodzik. Number 3.
okay, moving on to Fleet Bank. This area, the reason it's called Fleet Bank is that they were the original owner of this property. And where it shows up here, let me just, there we go. It's a 2 parcels on this off of Winding Hollow Road, which is off of 184, just south of 184. There's a 13 acres and a 0.85 acres. So this is when I stuck up one of the smaller parcels into it. The history of both of these were owned, was owned by the Fleet Bank, and another one was gifted as part from Andrew Lockwood in 2010. The full length woodland property is maintained since it's been received, no improvements done on the property. Again, the natural system value of $2,400 an acre puts in the middle of the little parcels. I'll come up with some way to adjust those as our earlier discussion. This is Winding Hollow Road along the northern edge. And then it's they have a large swath of that, and then the 2 little parcels. I should also point out that where this pointed area is here, my marker, where's my mouse here? When I come into here, it's hard to see it, but yeah. Oh, there it goes. This area also is an open space area that I did not include because I don't really technically have abutment here at a point. Okay, so I did not include this one. I could talk about including that one also, but with have limiting availability, but it could be developed and stuff. What I found was when I did this, there is a trail that goes along here, almost to this point. It goes up along here and then along here and then out to the street. That's being utilized by the neighbors. It's developed. Someone's keeping it somewhat clear, but there's a number of large boulders in here, and I've got pictures in later on. But just so you're aware of it. And this little triangle here is added. It was a gifted. Again, it's totally surrounded, landlocked, non-developable that was donated to be added onto this one. Okay. Moving along to the next part of it is there's minor littering along the Windy Hollow public access point. Got this. It's not gross and stuff, but just things. We're maintaining this as far as our carbon sequestration bank. This is that corner point that's actually marked. This is one of the few points that are marked on the properties. And then this is this big boulder here with the trail that kind of goes up towards it. The property is limited habitat resilience things. It is got some hills to it, so it does have some contours to it as you go through the property. This is the triangle down here, and then this is the larger property in this area up here. Moving along, this is better pictures of the boulders and stuff. And then we've got the soils map. It's pretty much all the same with some wetlands in the area, but a minor portion of it. Again, all woodland in the land coverage. And then when we go down to the next page, the natural diversity, there's nothing shows up, even though there's stuff near it. And then likewise for the resiliency, it's pretty much in the average zones in here coming off of Winding Hollow. Looking at the, and so then we've got the photos for historicals. And then there's no historical sites or ruins on this parcel. And so in this case, the management recommendations are general appearance cleanup, boundary marking, public youth encouragement, because there's already a trail there being used, signage, establishing walking trails, invasive plant control, because there is some invasives in the area, and then incorporation into the potential green belt here, because I've got that marked up in here in this particular area. And then we get into section 4, or the rest of section 4 is with the management plans, is taking a look at the area cleanup potentially, and then again surveying the residents as far as where they want to go, working with Parks and Rec, and no specific special contact and stuff. So this is where we are on this one, Larry. So I don't know if you want another motion.
Yep, I think we need to do that for the record, if you will. So, I guess again, I'll make a motion to accept Tom's management recommendations for the Fleet Bank property. Looking for second. I think from
I second
Karen.
it.
Okay. Discussions, guys. Any changes you want to see to this, Bray?
The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 7th bullet down, I think we can eliminate that.
Okay.
But other than that, I think this is one of those properties that, as you said, that the local use of it, which is great. Level of usage probably that's works well for that property, at least in the current time frame. You know, with
No comment.
nice to clean it up always, but they probably have people around that maybe do that. I don't know. Because if you didn't find very much trash in the woods, that's always a good thing.
Could I have a
Yep.
comment? Make a comment?
Yep, Kristen, yep.
The previous property where we said we didn't want trail establishment, it was because it was just like a trash heap that nobody was using. This one seems to be something that people are using. And I think it is important when people are using a property to have established trails, because that prevents them from just wandering all over the place. So if people are using it and there are some trails established, that you should really support the establishment of trails, like I said, just to prevent people from randomly walking wherever they want. You know, if there's trails, people will tend to use them more. So it would, I think on this particular property that's different than the others, it may enhance the areas that are off trail.
Okay,
I would move to keep this actual
Yep.
on this
Oh,
particular
do
case.
do we know that there's a lot of off-trail walking on this property?
I would say from, there's the trail pictures going up here. Let me go back up here a little bit. Let's see, go up a couple pages here. It's hard to, let me see, going back up here. Oh, right here. Okay. The trail, the trail is actually in this picture here, right alongside of here. So this is the trail. It's been cut back just by somebody, and it goes the entire length of the property. And then it curves around and it goes out to that marker. Now, the farther you go, the more overgrown it has. Like somebody hasn't, it's not like being used every day, because it's a dead end trail. And so somebody who's been walking out there going halfway. I think people, as you get closer, they come up here, and I think there's a lot of kids and stuff that would come up and play on these boulders and that type of stuff, is what you're really more dealing with than anything else.
I don't have a strong opinion. I was just throwing that out that, you know, if people are using it, maybe it's better to have a trail than no trail.
Yep. Other comments, Michelle?
But that's already in there, though. I don't know. We're not changing it. I mean, that's already, it already says have the trail there.
No, but he's saying to take that out.
No, he wasn't.
No,
No, he wasn't.
I
No,
misunderstood.
the one he
No.
said to take out was
Number-
the wildlife habitat enhancements.
right.
Resulting from trail establishment. So in other words,
No.
if you establish-
Yeah, but
above-
that's the
above that
wildlife
is established
trails.
walking trail.
Right.
That has nothing to do with the trail is established a walking trail. Wildlife habitat's about the wildlife trails.
Right, other comments? All right, looking for a vote with that highlighted item being removed. Agree to the recommendations as stated. All in favor, raise their hands. We're unanimous again, Bruce. So that's with that removed, it was approved. All right, next parcel.
Okay, now this one, I have, in going down my list, I would have had Gary Court. This was not included in the package, so I'll skip this one for this time. Is that okay? Or do you want me to kind of go through it so you see it?
Let's, my suspicion is we're probably not gonna get through all of them anyway,
Okay,
because we have other things to discuss, so I wanna chug through at least more than half.
okay, so
Then
I'll
we'll
move on to the
cycle
ones that
back.
are in the package. The Kylie open space. This is one of them that was bought that Bray can probably tell us a lot of history on at the 1988 referendum, okay? So single pin, this is just north of the senior center. You got the senior center, a private road on the Ackleys, and then there's a stone wall, and then this property, and it goes all the way up to the North Road, okay? So, you know, the town purchased it as part of the 1988 open space bonding referendum and I went back and reread the referendum and said, and we stated it in our 1989 conservation plan was as a possible site for community center or other recreational facility. Okay, so that's why the town owns this parcel and they've done nothing with it. So my question is, in the big picture, and I struggled with this as far as when I was drafting this together, is what should we be doing with this? Should we be saying the Parks and that's where I took it and basically said, let's dump this back on Parks and Rec and says, hey, what are you doing here? It's been 30, 3 years, and you haven't done anything yet with it, and the place is staying vacant. So what's going on here? So that's the way, just from a big picture, as far as where I'm heading with this one. This is one that has a lot of, if you take a look at the site plan on this, we'll see that there's a lot of areas where it's remained vacant, but the neighbors have encroached and have been cutting back into the property. And that's what these pictures are here. You can see where they've actually cutting the logs down and turning it all into grass coming from the north road side of it. Again, this natural system value, this is a very low value at $1,200 an acre. Okay. And so this gives you the site map. It's what you have here, and let me get my thing. Oh, there's my mouse. Okay, get over the picture here. You can kind of see that there's these areas, these access strips that go out to North Road, and also to this other public right access driveway. And all those have been turned in. These have been turned into grass areas. These are all grass areas. This portion out here is the state owns this whole, this is 117, the width of 117. And the only wetlands is right in here in this area that we're highlighting right now. There's actually standing water in that. It comes right up to, and there's a nice strong wire fence the entire length of this property, and a stone wall along this whole southern boundary here that parallels the private paved road here. Okay, the rest of it is just all flat woodlands. Okay, so just to kind of, and then this is the senior center to the south of it. And I can see where, and then, but when you get to littering, all these little blue stacks, there's at least 100 of them are beer cans. Okay, they're just dumped over the wall, the stone wall from the senior center.
Oh my God.
Okay, so that's the kind of
So
stuff.
those seniors are sitting there
Oh
boozing
my
it up?
God.
What?
So
Okay,
it's all Bud Light. Somebody likes Bud Light. There's for what, a day or something. I don't know what's going on there. But again, it's all natural woodlands, social stakeholders that the neighbors have established encroachments, and that, but the landscape is nice. I got this nice little picture here of this blossoming purple flower, and all the woodlands and a lot of trees and stuff. But some little kind of different trees are on the property. But from a hydrographic, the only flooding is going to be right up to the corner here as 117 floods. And so really not much to say there. It's all single soil, the glacial stuff. It's all 100% tree covered right in here. No issues there. And the whole thing is in the natural diversity database. And so that's why it's of use for us to say we want to keep it natural, as opposed to what the town referendum says, hey, turn this into a parking lot, essentially, or some kind of recreation field. So this is where I'm kind of torn as far as this is where I'm kind of relying a little bit on Bray's history as far as on what the thought process was. Obviously, we went and built the senior center, but we didn't go over to the other area. From a database perspective, it's okay area, nothing to write home about. Historically, I'm not going to go into the pictures here. And then I do have, again, the stone walls. There's nothing here, is just stone walls with the support, obviously farming, because this fence line also has embedded in a wire fencing is also around the entire perimeter of the property that's hit and miss. So for the management recommendations, very similar to the last one, boundary marking, potential public use encouragement signage, potential walking trail, all the rest of them stuff, and incorporation into green belt, because we come right alongside Route 117 where the Tri-Town Trail wants to be going. And then for the multi-year plan here is to do some surveys and take a look at what's going on here, and then have this all coordinated through Parks and Rec, because they kind of really should be doing more with this property. Okay, so that's what I had on this one.
Okay. On this one, I got a few comments, so I'm trying to decide, do I really want to make a motion? Um,
I was gonna make a motion
Or
to
not.
accept it.
Okay,
As Tom,
is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have some comments, so I'll go first. I think, I mean, first two bullets is fine. I'm not sure about public use encouragement yet. Signage, absolutely. But I think that there's something we should add on this one, given what you said, is that the town should, maybe it's Parks and Recs, but the town should contact the residents who are encroaching, and saying, there's posting, and to tell them they're encroaching, because it is town property. So I think that, we should be maybe proactive when there's evidence of encroachment, rather than just, we want to mark them, without encroachment, if you catch my drift there.
This is,
That's a good point.
Yeah, Tom?
I did not go into that because I was unsure of who would be responsible for taking on encroachment issues with the town. And I guess this is really a question to Bruce in regard to what's from the blight officer, and these encroachment issues. Is that something that's done by the enforcement officer, the planning and zoning enforcement officer?
Yeah, it would be done by Tom for blight. I guess it could be considered blight. So it'd be Tom, the blight officer. If there was encroachment near that wetland area you pointed out, that would be me. But it seems like most of it's in the upland area, not near the wetland at all.
No.
Okay, Kristen?
yeah, I was gonna say that, you may have two neighbors living adjacent to each other, maybe not even fully aware that in between them is town property, so one way to do that is put trails straight through there and get some volunteers in and plant some trees in there. Because whether it's, it may be fully conscious, they know perfectly well they're taking town property, but they might not even realize it, and they might be upset to find out that that's not your
That's the
property.
notification.
Yeah, that
That's the
has to happen.
notification.
That's
Yeah.
important, because I think there's some kind of laws, I don't know about here, but certain places, if you maintain property for 10 years, it becomes your property,
Yeah, but not when it applies to government property.
Mm.
Yeah, you can never
So if it's
adversely
a
possess
Yeah,
our
yeah.
public
If it's
property.
a personal property,
Mm.
like my neighbor, which I've been using the property for 20 years, theoretically, I can go say, eminent, that I basically, you forfeited the right to the property. You can't do that with town property.
Okay, good.
But, okay, let's see, with Tom, was your hand up? And
No, I was just saying, I did not contact these 3 or 4 individuals at all, but on other properties that I have run across and talking to them, it's typically well-intentioned. If it was, when I've talked to these property owners, it was over off of Judson and stuff. I talked to, I was taking a look at some properties over there. I talked to about 3 of the owners there that came out and asked what we were doing, what I was doing and stuff. And in every case, it's always been with a intention that I'm trying to just keep it beautiful, look at nice for my neighbors and stuff. I don't want it to look like the backyard there. And so I'm just trying to make it good for you. It's not like I want to take it over or anything, but I'm doing a favor to the town is how they look at it.
Mm.
Yep.
And we would rather have it just growing some native stuff rather than be mowed over in grass, turf.
Again, they say it's kind of an incidental amount of acreage here, like 0.0 something. And so from their viewpoint,
yeah.
what is
Well,
the
I don't know, if it's
aesthetic
usually there are access corridors, and so if you have a trail there, you don't have plantings anyway, so I'm less concerned about that versus the fact that they are on notice that this is town property, and that if we want to put a trail there, all of a sudden they get all up in arms, why are people walking on, quote, my property? It's not your property, right? Okay, other comments? Great.
One comment, could you go back to the map of this property? You have to go up, I think, Tom.
This one,
Keep going.
this is the last map.
No, keep going up. Okay. So going back to the history books on this, when the bonding issue came up in 1988 to purchase open space lands, it was decided that to throw a bone to the developers or the people that aren't quite so adamant about open space to say, well, let's let the town buy some property that might be future. We're not going to make it into an everything open space, but for the Kylie property, it was on the market at the time. And some people apparently thought it was a good price, whatever it was. So we included it in the bonding issue with the thought that the town has not been proactive about open space, future space for expansion of town facilities. And just like the COP property, we talked about having on the flat areas a Parks and Rec facility, like the one that they're trying to preserve over on the Oral School. And this might be, what we're looking at is there is no town center for Groton. We don't call downtown is Hamburger Hill, which is what to talk about. So they were looking at along 117 as possibly being expanded. And to go back to Tom's statement about, well, nothing's happened with this particular property. All you have to do is to see how much expansion the town has put money into, like a recreational center, for instance, a brand new recreation center. It's been on the books for 40, 50 years, and it still hasn't happened. So putting a swimming pool in it at the high school, for instance, to make it also a public pool, never happened. The high school doesn't even have a pool. So on this particular property, it's just left there on nobody's radar. And so I could see where the homeowners on this thing have just said, well, I'd like to push the woods back a little bit and expand my lawn. And the problem is that who wants to, what town person do you want to have go around and monitor all this over time? I think what you've said on it for current plans is fine. I think this is one of those ones that it is treed right now, and until some other decision is made, it should remain as trees, full tree coverage. But I think this is one of those that's, it could go either way. In other words, this might be a property that at some point in the future, some building will be put up on it. In lieu of other places in town that, like Wolfbrook, for instance, one of the ones on our, that we're looking at, is would be a wonderful one for the town to go ahead and complete purchasing it because of all the unique environmental habitats that are on that property. This one not. So in our going to the town council and the town to say we want some open space purchased, but in the meantime, we're not going to say the whole town has to be purchased for open space.
This
So
might
this
be a
is
good one for athletic fields,
Or,
flat,
yeah,
public, near the town center.
right.
All
But
right,
one of the
other
reasons the
comments,
town
Tom?
hasn't had the money.
Yeah, the only question is, should we be recategorizing this particular parcel out of the protected, essentially the protected open space area into either a recreational or down into the facilities categorization of open space, rather than leaving us up in the dedicated open space on our inventory? We have three categories, remember. We got the dedicated open space, the open space with recreation, and then which is principally Parks and Rec, and then open space with facilities, which ends up being the schools and public works stuff.
I would vote to support this as a facilities type of parcel at this point in time. Because I don't think it's on anybody's town's radar right now, thinking about what might happen in the near future, not the far future, but the near future on this.
All right, could you go back to your recommendations, Tom? Other comments? So what we got on the table is, oops, okay. 1, 2, public use encouragement is a question mark. Signage and notification to the encroaching land or the homeowners. Not sure about walking trails. We've already been kind of taken out the invasive plant one. Or I'm sorry, the second to the last one. And there's an added one that Bray brought up about recategorizing this as a open space / facilities property.
Can I just throw in one more thing?
Yep.
And this goes back to what Kristen was asking about trails. At one point, when the senior center was trying to expand walking as a reduce your good for your parks and so forth, there was an effort a number of years ago, and they were trying to identify trails that the someone who's older or has some limitations on walking trails to find some place for them to walk. And in that area was also a consideration at one point, Tri-Town Trails coming up North Road, coming out of Bluff Point and going up by the senior center, and then maybe possibly through this particular piece of property, going up to North Road and then on up to the Cobb property and so forth. So just to public use encouragement, if there was some sort of public a way to access this, let's say from the senior center, it could be one where trails could be developed for the seniors to walk around it. I've never heard anybody discuss that, but just thinking off the top of my head at the moment, that might be a possibility.
All right, Michelle?
Yeah, I think if we're going to recommend recategorizing this, which it sounds like we might, then I would say leave it option recategorize as recreation or facility, but then the rest of these recommendations are moot. So you either recategorize it or you recommend the other stuff, not both. So the recommendation would be recategorize, and then we don't even need a management plan.
Well, wouldn't the recommendation be that the town could reconsider, consider recategorizing it? That's not a recommendation from us. We're just suggesting to the town that they take a look at this because they haven't looked at it in 40 years and consider whether or not they want to make that designation. And then we revisit this depending on what they determine. No?
Well, right, what I'm saying is if we recommend that, then that should be the only recommendation. Because the rest of the recommendations are based on it being open space.
Well,
yeah.
Couple of comments here. One is that on the two plans that I didn't include, they actually incorporate open space that is on public works responsibility relative that are abutting parcels. And the thing that I run into with the facilities things is that, and this is in talking to Mr. Hanover, is that his public works people work with everything within their fence line. So if you go to the water pollution control facility off of Gary Lane, he only worries about the 8 acres of the facility that's inside his fence line, and the other 20 acres on the outside, and the two abutting parcels of 8 and 20 acres or 22 acres he doesn't care anything about. He's only interested in what's inside his fence line on the public works. Likewise, up at the Wells Road, he's worried about the stuff that's inside the fence line of his composting facility. As far as he doesn't worry about the rest of his area and the abutting 5 parcels or 4 parcels that are around it, that are all that are dedicated open space. So to some degree, I felt that we should be worrying about these other spaces. In this case, because of the small, relatively 5-acre small size of this, the flatness of it makes it ideal for building, like Bray had talked about from the historical perspective. I can see putting this more into the recreation thing, and then I have to agree that if you're going to say that it's recreation, then we'll just turn it over to Parks and Recs and says, you're going to really need to go off and deal with this. And I think that's really the discussion that we should have is rather than writing up a stewardship plan, it says, hey, Parks and Rec, why aren't you guys taking a look at this and doing more with this and take some responsibility for this particular parcel? Kind of rating it off, and then maybe to get something, one of the other parcels that is more of a dedicated open space area like Boulder Heights or something like that from them, that they're saying they're doing something and they're really not. So this is where I think we need to have some kind of discussion, maybe table this motion, have a discussion with Parks and Rec and see what they want to do. And would be my recommendation at this point.
I like that.
Good idea, Tom.
Comments? Does that seem a reasonable approach?
Yeah, I think we need more information, and I think we should wait on this one, like Tom said.
All right, well, we do have a motion on the floor. So is
Oh, can you,
that raised the motion willing to table this motion and do additional analysis or working with the town?
I agree to that.
All right, so I think, was it Bray and Kristen, Bruce, that did the motion? I forget now.
Well, I had done the original
Kristen
motion,
and
but now
Karen.
the motion is to table the motion and table the.
Yeah, we're really taking a vote. I'm asking us, to basically to withdraw the motion, right?
Yeah,
I'll
well, the
withdraw the
first
motion.
motion was to accept the recommendation. And it was made by Kristen and seconded by Karen. So you may want to,
I want to
Get rid of
withdraw
that
my
one.
motion. Can I do that?
Just withdraw it. We'll just table this thing and just like we haven't got all the plans anyhow.
Yeah.
All right, well, but I want to be specific. So we are tabling our vote on management recommendations on the Kylie open space parcel to allow further discussions with Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Is that agreeable to the motion and the seconder?
Yes.
So say yes or no, Karen.
Yes,
Okay, so the motion has been tabled and we'll take it up at our next meeting, Bruce. All right, Tom, was that you volunteering to go to Parks and Rec, or should we
Yes, I
identify
will
somebody
take
else?
the action.
All right,
We've
Good
been going
man.
at this for an hour. We're halfway through the 8 that are in the package. So if you want to skip and go on to the rest of the agenda, I have no problem at this point.
Good idea.
And I will take
right.
an action as far as with the subcommittee team to take based on the 4 that we did. I think we have a very good sample here of the different options that we have relative to the comments that were made. I will incorporate those along with Karen and Bray into the next draft for our May meeting. I'll incorporate those actions into to make it more consistent with the way the actions came out for these first 4. And so you'll see
All right.
that we batched with the next group.
Good.
so no, I agree. I didn't want to spend the whole time on this because it's be an ongoing effort. So I'm fine with kind of pausing here. We'll take it up at our next, what are we, at our May meeting, Bruce, got it out, to continue this discussion and obviously encourage everyone to read this stuff beforehand and kind of mark up you know, as we've been talking about the management recommendations portion, because the rest are facts. And we really want to focus on the recommendations and what we want to go back to the town with as our advice. So we'll wrap up this portion of it. I want to thank Tom again and the what do you call yourself again? The parcel team?
Well, we're the stewardship plan team.
The stewardship plan team for their work on this. This is good stuff. And I think, you know, as we go forward, the right, you know, the communication to the town, you know, actually helps move the ball forward and gets the stewardship more upfront and worked on. So I think that's all the good stuff. So having said that, so our go forward plan is I think I will hold off on putting any of these things out on the website until we can kind of go with the first tranche of the 8 or 9. So we'll look for that next month. So I'll hold off on that request. And our next item is a plastic update on NIPS. And basically that's going at the state level. Does any, I didn't have a chance to see, there's there been any progress at the state level for that particular bill? Is anyone aware of that?
There was an article in the paper in the past week to say that it seems as though the bill is still out there, except that the wine and liquor element, the wine bottles and liquor bottles are not going to be part of the new additional fee. So we were trying to, I think the bill initially wanted to put in all bottles, including liquor bottles. They're going to leave the NIPS in, but the wine lobby, the package store lobby, was able to drop from it the wine bottles and so forth. And I could kind of understand their position only from that when you, a lot of the package stores around the area, they don't have this room or the space set up for doing recycling. And I think the state hasn't done a very good job of, you know, looking at the bigger picture of recycling, that if there's a way to facilitate the handling of this, if we have recycling centers that you go to, you could drop them off, that's fair. Right now, it's really difficult, like beer bottles, to recycle those. So I can understand where there was very strong pushback, you know, from that, but it looks as though that the nip bottles are still alive. Or
All
or
right.
at least put a fee on the bottles. Now that is going to be interesting, because I can see people taking nip bottles to like Stop and Shop and the recycling center or Big Y, and jamming up the machine every time you put one in, because they were never designed to handle something that small.
They'll make some new machines.
And
Well,
I can see a sign going right from the very start.
Yeah.
It's,
that would be, Ray, that would be an issue, but isn't that where Kathleen Stouffer wants to take on all the NIPS, and that her organization, the Arc of Eastern
Right.
Connecticut, would take responsibility for those NIPS in our area? That's what she's pushing
that's
for.
an approach for a solution. So I think so there's progress. It's not dead. And you're right. What's the life cycle here of the nip bottles is certainly something to be addressed. You're right. She would like to make that a business or continue that business, which means you throw them in a bin and then they take the bins up to her facility and do it. You don't actually crush them, you know, there, which is feasible, I guess. And they get a percentage of the fee. All right, so we'll keep an eye on that. The whole point from a town point of view is we said we would push and support the state versus trying to do something at the town level. And I think that's where we're still at. Let's see where the state winds up on this. and we'll keep our eye on it. So the next set of things, there's a lot of specifics. So I think I've got a couple, and I think Tom has a couple. Uh, the Estuarian Research Reserve. Um, I I think we talked about that, and they kind of went off. And I haven't seen a report back from I think there was 7 or 8 meetings that they ran. I don't know if anyone else has seen their final set of recommendations, but that's going on through the rest of the year and seems to be pretty much on track to be part of that National Estuarian Research Reserve Program. So if no one has any additional data on that, we can move to the next item. CCSMM, who was working on that? I forget offhand.
I was supposed to, I signed up for a conference and then I had complete inability to access the conference. And so I'm still trying to get from the conference people who ran it, trying to get a recording or something. So that got stalled out from.
All right, so we'll leave that, forward that to next month if there's anything coming out of that. On the Pleasant Valley School, that actually is on the town council tomorrow. I have gotten a slot as part of the input, and I thought as we were doing this, I got a response from one of the council members. Let me just quick see. Okay, now just an acknowledgement that they got the letter. So basically, let me look up, because I think this was, I can't remember, Bruce, this was in a prior one, or did we repeat it in this one, the agenda package?
It was in a prior one. We may have put it in again, but I think we said that we had it last time, so we need to.
Yeah, it was published by us on March 4th. And basically it said that the council scheduled a public hearing, and that's what we're referring to. Our recommendation was that it was that we supported development of the property, but that there's 8 acres of forest canopy that we should look for a conservation easement or something to help with carbon sequestration. That's kind of the short form. So I was planning on bringing that recommendation again, since we already put it in, to the town. The only thing is that I updated the rating from our, because I think I said we were 8th out of 9, so it was a low rated economic value. It's 9th out of 11. So it's down there in the lower quartile of natural systems value. And it's that 8 acres that really has the only value. The problem is the total property has half of it that's kind of barren or developed, so it has very nominal value. So it's kind of a bifurcated environment. So if there's not any comments or questions on that, that will be the commission's input to the town council tomorrow. The next one is the Colonel Ledyard School. I'm trying to remember, we inputted before on that. I don't think there was any update on that, is there? Nope, I'm trying to remember why that was on there. I know we already put in our recommendations into the town council. So I'm trying to now remember why we had that on there. On the Wolfbrook property, what happened is, hold on, we did have a letter into the Oswego grant support from us. What I did is I took that letter and I provided context to 2 new inputs after that letter. We had it ranked number one on our economic model, by the way, for acquisition and retention. But I referenced the new executive order that occurred since we actually wrote our letter, that raises the percent to be open space from 20, well, from Connecticut's 21% to 30% from a federal point of view, which gets into grant applications and other things. You think how this percolates down. And the Governor's Bill 6441 for climate change also addresses how to get funding, how to raise funds, and other mechanisms. So that was put in. I don't think there's anything upcoming for that, other than that is being worked. The town planning staff is continuing to support the acquisition of that property. And right now, I'll leave it there. Okay. But there is stuff going on. It's just under executive review by the town.
Larry?
Tom.
I just
Yep.
want to point out one thing is that our last meeting, Bruce mentioned that they had gotten the letter from the state but they hadn't received any of the other documents and stuff. And I was able to find online that the state has issued the timeline for the Oswald utilization. Step 1 is your purchase sales agreement within 3 months, and then step 2 is your mapping submitted within 9 months. So that's really what the next step is relative to the procurement and the timeline that the state is using for their funding portion of the purchase.
I just read that, yeah.
All right, thank you. Next one is Resilience Task Force recommendation, but the next two are budget ones. So there was, during the budget reviews, there was, and I know we didn't have time as a commission to go in and provide comments on sustainability, but I do know that 1, 2, 3, 4. Dan, were you there as 4? I'm trying to remember. There was a number of the commission members provided testimony as citizens because we didn't have the ability to sit there and do it as a commission. And I think there was another four folks that provided support for that position as well. So we'll see how that goes. Then the next is the open space budget recommendation, which I know I did support that at the budget review meeting, that they do keep that in the budget. I haven't heard anything else. So I know they're meeting, I think this week, Bruce, more on budget stuff. So I haven't heard about what's in or what's out, or has any decisions been made on budget line items?
Well, our department's budget review was last week for planning, and they accepted the amount that was presented by the town manager. So that would suggest that the resilience manager is funded for that. In terms of the open space acquisition fund, I don't know which department that's under, so I don't know if they reviewed that yet or not. But maybe Tom does his hand up.
It's part of the CIP budget, which will be coming up this week.
Yeah, that's correct. CIP's this.
I don't know if it's tonight, or I don't know how they had a schedule. I don't know how well they're holding the schedule. So
I don't know. I know they got one tomorrow night.
In parallel with what we're doing here, I think it's either tonight or tomorrow night. This budget process is really moving along here quickly, but it's towards the end.
All right. Well, I mean, it's kind of a nit out of, almost a couple $100 million. So I suspect that they won't focus on that. The great thicket status. I know we talked about that last time, and I think Tom, you were the one on that particular item.
And I have yet to find any addition. The question was asked by one of the town councilors as far as, is there anybody been utilizing it? And I have not found any indication of, or an example of it. I haven't pressed that very much. I was, more focused on stewardship plans this past period. But I can take an action to contact. I haven't found anything in web searches, so I'm going to have to start emailing somebody like at the Fish and Wildlife folks from the feds to see if they're in the points of contact. I have information that's available, but I just have not queried to the higher ups there and any examples. But I will take an action.
All right, well, I think the stewardship workbook does has a priority, so I think that was the absolutely correct priority. Now on the 2020, next item on the agenda is the 2020 objectives. That is out there in the website. And let's see, can I share the screen here, Bruce? Can I ask for that? Let's see. So what I've been doing is the green is complete and the gray is kind of like updated things. This is a sort on short-term and near-term items. So if I get rid of, let's see. I was trying to say is get rid of the greens and the grays. Choose by color, cell color, no fill. Okay, so this gets into the ones that we don't really have anything on. So this is kind of what we've been talking about to some extent. I think the stewardship on those missing parcels is there. This one is more with the resiliency one, so I'm not sure we want to do anything there. So on this one, has been any comments or thoughts on the Southern Cross Connect to Mystic River and hooking up with the Crosstown Trail?
I've been through the talking to the Parks and Recs, Mr. Mark Berry there as part of the Trail Task Force, and also have gone and done observations at the old Cutler School property. There is a bridge in place now. Mr. Berry has gone off and has been working with the construction people to have this bridge incorporated in the construction process, and that's still all moving along. Mr. Berry has got the ball on this one. So then once that happens, that you'll be able to adjust the Crosstown Trail and then have this this action item work. So I would just say that we're monitoring this. All the right people are talking to make it happen. But you won't know anything and probably until the July or August timeframe, because it'll be one of the last things done as they finish up the school, the outside of the school, and all the facilities. They started putting the fencing up around the baseball diamond and that kind of stuff. So as a team gets to do things, it'll be part of that process with the goal of being ready for the September start. Or this may actually run into October or November too, because this is an extra add-on to the construction process.
Should this then be changed to Parks and Rec rather than Planning and Development?
I would say yes.
Can I? I would say it's a Parks and Rec project right now. One of the things that's going to happen is the trails leading to the bridge from the Cutler side, and then especially a new trail going on the other side of the river over to connect to the BB Pond Trail. I was talking with Mark a couple of years ago about that area, and so it's something that if the Conservation Commission members want to walk in there at some point, once we get a I haven't had a chance to talk to Mark about it. If he wants some help on redeveloping a new trail instead of the one that's along the stream corridor that's behind the houses on Judson Avenue. So that's something that the Conservation Commission might be able to, especially if the bridge gets done, that'll have to be looked at and be nice for us to join to help out.
This is Tom Olson.
Uh,
I walked that yesterday, and the trail, the bridge that's in there is very well is fairly well constructed as for a neighborhood project. And the trail is still being maintained fairly clean the whole way. And GOSA has put some of their markings already on that trail. So people have been utilizing it, and the rerouting coming from the Merritt to over there, that's come, GOSA went ahead and marked it. So folks could just follow up for the Tri-Town Trail, just to let you know that they've kind of taken on that as part of their efforts.
All right. Yeah, I have noticed that the trails around there seem to now be more use. I see that. I look at the level of beaten down that the trails are as a use thing. So it started off a number of months ago. You could hardly tell where the trail is, and now the trails seem to be a bit beaten down a bit, which is a sign of use, right? So I think that's a positive thing. All right. Let's see.
Larry, just to go back one item, the capital improvement budget discussions at 6 p.m. tomorrow night, excuse me, Wednesday night, the 7th.
All right. So that's the 7th. So it's April 7th. All right. Yeah, they're really chunking along on that progress on the on it. All right. I'm going to republish this in the agenda next time. I'm not going to do a web update, and ask people to highlight any items they have, or to add their names to any of those actions to see if we can start knocking off some of these. There are a bunch that are completed, which is good. And there's a bunch that have status on it. And there's others, not so much. But I think we're making progress. Let's see. Connecticut Trails Day. Well, this one got kind of, this has got the COVID push this year to be virtual. And as I recall in our last session, we were talking about having a virtual Trails Day or a support. Has anybody worked on that over the last month?
I have not.
I was gonna do a video, which I'm still planning to do. So Tom, thanks for forwarding the instructions on the link of that. And then we could just, I think the idea then was just to post it on our website.
Well, I think it's
And
also
upload it, sorry.
Yeah, upload it to the Trails Day, and also link it to Parks and Rec. I mean, they've got, and
right.
if right. So once you have it done, I can contact Parks and Recs and say, hey, here's where it is. Please put it on your friends and family, and they've got a much extensive list in terms of their friends page. So that would be good. All right, thank you. So moving along to report of chair, I have a couple of things. One is we did get a notification from the town that 0 Flanders Road, which as you all recall, we recommended to be retained as open space. They submitted it as an option for a data center site. So I had some discussion with Bruce about some key items and questions about, is that really a good data center site? So I'm not sure where, there was a couple other sites in the proposal back from the town. Do you have any update, Bruce, on Zero Philanders Road from the data center use?
No, I don't have any update other than what you just shared at this point, no. Just that it's under
We're
consideration.
gonna keep, yeah, we're gonna keep an eye on that, although I will say when I read the proposal that they were offering up $500,000 a year to pay for taxes on it, which seemed a little high because they're talking about investing, $100 million or so, which is also a little strange given what that data center could be. So I'll kind of keep an eye on that, having run data centers to see if I can sort out what the heck is really going on there. Tom?
Yeah, just for going kind of on this particular parcel, I incorporated this parcel into the Pendleton Farms because it's literally a butting across Flanders Road from the Pendleton Farm open space. And so I've walked that parcel and I included both of them together as a joint area because they're right next to each other. So the question is, should we be separating this thing out if it's going to be, and saying that it's really not dedicated open space if the town's offering it somewhere for a data center? This kind of goes back to this whole thing. The town received this parcel well before open space was an issue. They've maintained it as vacant space. We've kind of looked at it from our perspective to say, hey, this looks like, it smells like, and so we're going to put it on our inventory as dedicated as open space, and we'll go through the dedication process as we go through cleaning up all the deeds. But this is where where the rubber meets the road to some degree, with the actions speak louder than the words, that the town is off trying to sell this property, relatively speaking. So that's going to send a bad message also. So should I be taking it out of the Pendleton Farms open space area? Because I can easily do
I don't know.
that.
I mean, I think it's a low probability event between you and me. So I kind of, rather than investing in trying to separate it, at least for now, I would leave it there and let's watch this space. Would be my recommendation. Yeah, Bray?
I would agree. This is again one of the properties that the town has not done anything with for 40 years, whatever, and so it's freed over. And because it's in the industrial area, according to zoning, and it's up against Holstein's property and what's the other guy's name, property that's behind there, which is always has been the promise of some big, huge corporation coming in and landing there. But I agree with you that we haven't been successful at all of anything that, well, there have been people who've looked at it, I guess, over the years, but nothing's ever come of it. So I would say one of our lower categories for this property. I don't think the town is going to ever, at least right now, the town's not going to change it over to dedicated or permanent open space. And so right now it's dedicated open space because I haven't done anything to it. So hence the trees and so forth. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of energy into this particular property of trying to preserve it and so forth, because of where it is. But I think there are other properties that we can do a whole lot more with, be more important than that one.
Just as another data point, one of this is that this was a good connector property from an east-west perspective, because you had, you could be going essentially from Pequot Woods across into the Watrous or the Wolfbrook property, up through Pendleton, across Flanders, through this property, and then if onto the Holstein, it's supposedly into Gosa is very interested in that property as far as for their sheep farm on North property. and then also potentially under the causeways and stuff to Kevlinwood Hill. So it was a connector property more than anything else is where we were looking at it from a good stewardship perspective. And that's how the recommendation went in to the planning when we were asked about what to do with this property. We said that we wanted to keep it as open space.
All right, so basically watch this space is kind of where we're at. Bray's suggestion is we're not going to break our pick on this one. But we'll see what happens. The other thing I had was I had a status call with the Yukon team. As you recall, they're doing as part of their senior project, looking at the economic model. So it looks like they're doing a decent job of cleaning up the model and making it more usable and user-friendly. They did some work on source validation. Good news, bad news. Bad news to me is they didn't said, I can't find anything better than the data you got, which to me is bad news. Or I suppose it could be viewed as good news, but I didn't. I was hoping to say, come on, guys, you're bright kids. You should find something better. So there's additional work to done. They're doing some sensitivity analysis, some other things. That's supposed to be completed the end of this month. And I will provide an update, hopefully at our May meeting on the updated model. So look at it not as changing values, more as making it easier to use and to be more, how to extract information to present to town council and planning staff and other folks. So that's what they're kind of chewing on as the next phase. We'll see what happens. Unfortunately, Michelle, I did push for GIS people and they went, no, we're not really GIS people.
Yeah.
I did think of a couple of ways to automate some of these things and they kind of walked away from that. So
Yeah, that's
I
too
tried.
bad. That's too
Yeah,
bad.
I tried. All right, that's it. That's it for me. Report of staff.
Wait,
I did,
is it, Larry, you had under in the agenda, you had executive order under a reported chairman. Executive
Yeah,
order.
we talked about it earlier. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the one from
maybe I didn't
earlier.
talk about it enough.
Okay, no,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we put it out in the agenda, right, Bruce?
Yeah, that was in the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting read, but executive orders are until things get passed the law. But like I said earlier, is I do suspect that it will enhance our ability to win grants, et cetera, if we're aligned with that executive order. And the same
Okay.
with the state, right? And that was really just kind of an awareness one more than anything else. Not a lot we can do about until they come out with guidelines
Right.
and other things. All right. Bruce, back to you
Report of
on
staff?
report of staff. Yep.
Sure. Well, first thing is in the next month or two, we may have a couple grant applications that are going to be submitted. And we may ask you guys to consider endorsing them. One of them is the Long Island Sound Futures Fund grant. The other one's the National Resiliency Fund grant, or the National Coastal Resiliency Fund grant. Both of them, we want to apply to do a resiliency and sustainability study in downtown Mystic. Last year, we applied for the Long Island Sound Futures Fund grant, and it was a really tough year for that grant with COVID and limited funding. So we didn't get it, but we're going to reapply for that this year. We're also going to reapply for a similar grant, but it's more at a national level, because we really want to try to get that study going down there. And hopefully one of those two grants we get, and we can get that going. I think they're both due in early June. So either next month's meeting or the meeting after that, I may have a couple proposals for you to review. See if you.
All right. Well, that was going to be my comment, is knowing our schedule. is we need a bit of a lead time since we only meet once a month unless it's something where we want to hold a special meeting. So these kind of things for grant applications, I kind of like to do as part of our normal business rather than a special meeting. So, get us something. I have no problems with you getting it to us as a special communication so we can review it before the meetings. But I'd like to kind of address it at our normal standing meetings. So what's the next meeting? May something or other. May 5th?
Yeah, May 3rd.
All right. So if we can get something at our May meeting, that'd be great for that. All right. Anything else, Mr. Olson?
Okay, a couple items. One is this is a follow-up to this Long Island Sound and the coastal funds. I think we've seen these in the past, and I think we would just need to know some of the general parameters as far as what you're doing and maybe a website and stuff, just so to be able to put an endorsement together for you. And so I think that's really what you're looking for is an endorsement letter. So
Right.
those draft letters, we could have those kind of together as far as the package for the May meeting, if that supports your timeline. And I think we could do those. We don't really need to review the whole award package or stuff. The other thing is I've been in contact, as far as from a staff perspective, I've been in touch with the GIS staff. Brian, who's in charge of the whole IT department there, and he has hired on a new person that reported on starting last Monday as to replace Jenna, who used to do all the GIS mapping and stuff. And so it's been a while. She's been gone for a number of months already, but they finally got somebody to replace her. And one of the things that I proposed to them is that, hey, you've got your stock maps here don't match up with what we've been working on from our inventory perspective. And so I'd like to work with the parcel team here to kind of go through that again. And I'm assuming that the COVID stuff is going to allow us to get into the town hall here shortly. And so to go off and talk to these folks and try to get, as with this new guy, as he's learning the system, to say, hey, this is the kind of things we would like to see, with the thought process being that that all the town properties should be on a separate map, and then we identify on each of the individualized parcels, whether it's a dedicated open space, a recreation open space, a facility open space, or just town-owned property that with some kind of facility on it, as opposed to open space with facilities. And then to get them to update their listing to match up with what our inventory is, so that in theory, I should be able to push the button from the GIS that says for the town of Groton, I want to know what all your properties are, and then I could have all that information all at one time. So I'm going to see if I'm going to take an action behind and work with the rest of the parcel people here to see if that's a way forward working with the staff here.
All right, Michelle?
Yeah, this Michelle, Tom, I think it's a great idea, and I would absolutely love to meet with you with that guy to explain what I did, sort of what the transition was between what they put out before, what I did, and what we'd like. So I would be more than happy to meet with you to make sure that everybody understands what was going on.
Appreciate it.
So Tom, just from a methodology point of view, because you already have 3 on the parcel team, I'd like you could do this as a special GIS subcommittee rather than the parcel committee. Just to,
Okay.
and I think yeah, you and Michelle would be the best to handle that anyway. And then we don't run afoul. Bruce
Gotcha.
keeps
No
looking at
problem.
me.
That's how I brought it up here. I
Yep.
told him, I gave him a
All
heads
right,
up that we'd be discussing this tonight, and that I'll get back to him later this week. So
All
appreciate
right,
it.
super.
And I'll keep you in the
All
loop, Michelle, as we go forward.
Perfect.
All right, okay, open mic. Anyone have other topics, information? Oh, Karen was first and then Kristen.
I just wanted to update everybody. I did try to reach out to Ashley Catul at Dunkin' Donuts in various ways. I called, I stopped over, I left messages. I explained why I was trying to reach her. She's very, very protected by her staff. She has not, I left my telephone number. I left a written note that I was representing the Conservation Commission. I have not heard from her. If you want me to continue, I will do that, but I'm assuming at this point that she's not interested in responding. Her manager at the Dunkin' Donuts that I went to didn't think the items were worth changing and thinks the whole thing is ridiculous because of COVID. But her boss has not contacted me.
All right. So Bruce, the point there was we were trying to reach out to, I guess, the
Ashley
most
Patel.
vocal critics on the plastics ordinance to see where they were. So let the record show that we have reached out and that we did not get any response.
Yep. Yeah, I recall
so
that.
we-
I think that was in the minutes from last meeting too. Maybe not. but
Oh, okay. All right. All right, very good. Yeah, Karen, don't beat your head on that one. That's fine. All right, Kristen, you had your
Yeah.
hand up.
Very briefly, I've been in touch with representatives from two of the garden clubs regarding the pollinator pathways and exchanged some emails with those people. So that's moving slowly, let's just say. And I wanted to reiterate on behalf of all of us, just congratulations, Tom, for the amazing, wonderful effort you've done on those, putting together those plans. You really knocked it out of the park. And like I said, before the meeting, you're making us all look good and we appreciate it. And then the last thing I want to ask is is everyone, except for possibly Bruce, has everyone at least had one vaccination or is anyone fully vaccinated? So we might actually meet in person again. Fully? Who's
Fully.
And you got nothing?
Oh, I have one, not fully. You
Okay,
just said
Michelle, you have
fully.
one at least?
No, but
have-
I'm willing to meet with people if they're vaccinated, so I'm willing to meet in person.
Okay, what about you, Bruce? Are you probably still in the waiting list?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a while for me now. But yeah, I don't know what the town policy is. I can't imagine it's in May, but
But you're eligible to sign up now. Isn't everybody sort of eligible to sign up now?
In a couple of weeks.
Yeah, almost, not there.
Almost.
So we're getting there. I think in the fall, I think we're gonna have the ability to actually meet.
Maybe
So
even
that's my-
midsummer, late summer.
Yeah, we'll see. But no, it's good. That's where I was. I went down to see the grandkids, and it was great. First time in a year.
Yeah.
So it was nice. All right. Any other? Oh, Michelle, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a question for Larry and Bruce after the recording's over. So stay, when you stop the recording, keep the meeting on, please. It's off
All right.
record.
I don't know if I can do that.
Off.
Not like legally. I just don't know if I can not record it after. But we'll
All
figure
right,
it out.
well, after we adjourn, I'll ask my question then.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we kind of, Tom.
There was an item in the agenda that was supposed to be that Bruce was supposed to talk about these compost bins. I don't know why they were part of the package. That's the
Yeah,
last
that's fine.
item. Last
Oh,
page.
yeah, I forgot to mention that. We got correspondence from Public Works. It was just kind of a public announcement. You know, they are selling in conjunction with SCARE, they're selling backyard compost bin sales. I think they've done this for several years, but I think starting again, you know, it's spring. People are thinking about gardening and composting, so they just kind of want to put that out there. They're $45. There's a form in the packet where you can your name and your phone number, and you can make out a check. I think they'll deliver one of those bins to you for $45.
Can you put some kind of send us a link and maybe Larry, we can put it on the website, or I could even publicize that through the GCA Facebook page or something, but I'd like that information. I'm sure a lot of people would.
Okay, I can forward the direct email.
Okay, great, thanks.
Also,
All right, I can certainly add that in terms of this is an April website update.
Yeah, and then Larry, I have some stuff for you. I'll call you or send you, we'll communicate separately about some website stuff.
All right, good. All right, with that, I guess I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded. Discussions, all in favor of adjourning? And it's unanimous. All right, guys, we'll see you next month.
I mean, people can stay for this. It's a point of order. And I didn't want to bring it up. It's about the minutes. And I didn't have my minutes open, so I couldn't find it. And so I didn't want to waste time on it. But it's literally a punctuation thing.